So now that we've laid out some of the issues that we all experience, we've talked about being triggered and post-traumatic stress, we've talked about guilt and shame, talked about soul ties, or just to say it simplistically, addiction, which could be an unhealthy attachment to a bad thing or an unhealthy attachment even to a good thing for the wrong reason. Now that we've done all that, I want to actually walk you through in this video 5 tools for your Freedom March. Now, let me give you some background information on all of this first. Here's point number 1 of this video. Sometimes healing happens instantly, and other times health emerges as we walk out our issues over time. I would love for health to always be this instant thing, but it is not always an instant thing. Sometimes it is, but the majority of the time, especially in this area, I think it's going to occur as you walk out this lifestyle of soul health intentionally over time. Now, there are 2 words. I've talked about them in other videos, and I talked about them in this book. I'm going to give you some of the info straight out of this book. On page 294, I mentioned that there are 2 words for healing that we see in the New Testament, at least 2. One of the words is this. It's the word iomai. It means it's a miracle. It's something that happens instantly, spontaneously. It is the healing that we see Jesus do that we most often associate with the healing that Jesus did. The blind man can see, the lame man can walk, the deaf man can hear. That is an iomai. It means miracle. And there's this other word that we see in the New Testament. It's the word therapeuo. You might recognize the close association with the English word we have, therapy. That word means to wait on, to attend to teach how to be well intentionally over time. Just like a therapist does when they do physical therapy, or even a therapist does when they do emotional counseling therapist type of therapy. They're teaching you how to walk it out over time. Now the amazing thing is we see both of these types of healing happen in Scripture. In fact, in Matthew chapter 8, Matthew tells a series of healing miracles. He says a leper approached Jesus and he's instantly made well. That's in Matthew 8:3. In other words, it's a miracle. A centurion's servant who'd contracted a disease that inflicted immediate paralysis on his body, he was healed. That's in Matthew 8:13. Those were both miracles. And then the Bible says that Jesus went to Peter's mother-in-law's house, and she was there. She was sick with a fever, probably on her deathbed. And Jesus walks over, he heals her. Immediately, she rises up and she begins serving them food. Now, this was on the Sabbath, so it was 6 p.m. So after 6 p.m., after sundown, it's the end of the day. So now they can freely work. So she begins cooking. They would have taken the Sabbath off, and she'd been sick during that time. Well, when that happens, the word travels, and now everybody comes to gather to that house to hear what's happening, to hear the commotion. And Matthew says, Jesus then healed them all. But the word he uses there is not the word that would be the miracle word, the iomai. He says Jesus literally therapeuoed them all. He, to say it another way, he taught them how to be well. So the application for us, like on a physical level, would be, can Jesus cure cancer or heal cancer? Absolutely. At the same time, medical doctors tell us that cancer is 95% environmental. What we do, what we eat, where we go, exercise, nutrition, sleep. So there are things that we can do proactively to take care of ourselves. No condemnation to anybody that experiences any kind of physical issue. He just also teaches us how to walk things out over time. Can Jesus cure, heal an STD? Absolutely. When I was working with drug addiction and rehabs, I saw people come in with STDs all the time, and I saw him heal instantly many people of some of the issues that they had been carrying for years. He can also teach people how to live well in that area. The beauty of giving themselves intimately to one other person over time and not dealing with those issues. Can he cure diabetes? Yes. He can also teach us about nutrition and health and walking and making wise food decisions. You see, these aren't at odds. And so often when I teach it, I actually show it like this. Healing, it is iomai. It's something God does. It's a miracle, and we believe in those today. My sister had a heart arrhythmia that was completely out of whack, and it was, according to the doctor, a miracle. One time my brother gouged out his eye, scratched the cornea. A week later, when they took off the patch, thinking he would never see out of that eye again, he had perfect vision. No glasses now, even in his 40s, no contacts. It's a miracle, something God does that we can't do. We can ask for it, but unless he does it, it doesn't happen. And then there's this other word, health. It's therapeuo, something we do with the wisdom of heaven that we're given. It's not a miracle, it's a lifestyle. Here's what's interesting is we see the word iomai, the miracle word, 30 times in the New Testament, the instantaneous healing that happens spontaneously in the moment. And then we see this word therapeuo 40 times, that one that means to serve, to attend to, or to wait upon menially, even by teaching to be well. That one with the intentional over time type of behaviors, it happens 40 times, meaning they're both very close in proximity, but if weight's given to either one, it would probably be the one that appears more. To teach people how to own the issue with which they're struggling, and then teach them how to walk out that issue. Here's one place where I get that. In two different places in the book of Luke, Luke 9:2 and Luke 10:9, Jesus actually sent out the 12 and empowered them with the same power, presumably, that he carried. And then he sent out 70 more with that same dose of empowerment. And he told them this. He said, as you go to preach, tell them the kingdom of God is near. And one of the things he said to do was to heal the sick. Notably, the word that he uses there was not go iomai, go miracle the sick. Now we know they did miracles because they report back and we read all the stories and see it happen over and over. But the word he uses right there is therapeuo. That is, go therapeuo the sick. Go teach them how to be well, how to live whole. And I think this is so important to lock onto because so often the vision that we have in our minds about how transformation will occur in our lives, particularly in the area of soul wholeness, is right here, as I put on the screen. We have these high level of symptoms illustrated by the left side of the chart right there, and we've been dealing with them for a while, and our expectation is that we go deal with one therapeutic resource, and really the symptoms disappear, and over time we walk out completely free of those symptoms. That is really more like a miracle. You just have one encounter and it's done. The reality is for most of us, the symptoms are going to be pretty high, and time's going to pass, and we'll seek a therapeutic resource. And symptoms will go down a little bit. And then we seek another therapeutic resource. Symptoms go down a little bit. We seek another therapeutic resource. Symptoms go down. They may go back up a little bit on the journey. We seek another therapeutic resource. They go down. Over time, we actually make a lot of progress and get better. It doesn't look like a miracle. It looks like owning your position and then powerfully walking that out. So that said, here are 5 tools for walking in soul wholeness, or you could say it this way, walking in soul therapeuo. Here, number 1 is this: move more. That's going to be to exercise. And I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why here in this video. Eat better. I'll tell you why in point number 3 of this video, as well as writing things out in point number 3, and then seeking professional help. I'll talk about that a little bit in point number 3. And then in the next video, we'll start talking about the 5th one, which is stepping into the rhythm of creation. I'll tell you how to know when you're out of rhythm, and then I'll give you some tools, some resources to get back into alignment and to stay in that groove. Here's tool number 1. Tool number 1 of 5 to walk in soul wholeness, soul therapeuo, is to move more. And here are 3 reasons why you should do some form of regular movement or exercise. I'm not telling you what the exercise has to be. You get to decide that. Here are 3 reasons why you need to do the exercise. The first one is this: tiredness mimics depression, and depression mimics tiredness. So a couple years ago, I remember sitting in a coffee shop here in my hometown in Birmingham, and I was sitting in the window. I'm sitting there, it's a bright sunny day outside, and I feel sluggish. And sometimes I've learned that like when it's a dreary day outside, like I'll wake up and feel like I'm dragging. I'll feel slow. I'll just feel kind of, groggy. This was not a day that was like that. I mean, this was outside a perfect day. And I thought, why am I feeling down? Like, because the weather's not down. And then I looked down at my phone and I had a couple text messages there, and I realized that I had been walking, I was reminded, through a tough season. The story that was going on at that time, not the story in my head. So often we get the story in our head wrong, right? Because the perception is not always reality. The story that was going on is I had an ex-wife who decided she wanted to divorce me. She had taken me to court 7 times, including multiple times before she filed. I had to go to 2 separate mediations on which she was completely inflexible and would not negotiate at all. So just kind of sat there in a separate room, just there. I sat through a 4.5, 5-hour deposition. That entire season, she ignored me blatantly in front of my children. That was what was going on. In that moment, I realized I'm not tired. I went to bed early the previous night. I haven't been doing a whole lot of activity. I've been journaling and writing and doing some work, but I'm not tired. I'm actually depressed. Maybe not the clinical definition of depressed, but I am clearly down. Here's what happens. When you feel depressed, the emotion, it makes your body tired. And when you're tired, you can actually feel like you're depressed. The two of those can mimic each other. If you exercise, it sends your body sparking in the opposite direction. And after you exercise, if you still feel emotionally down, then you've got a clue, hey, I've got something that I might need to deal with, but at that time your emotional state is a little bit up because of the endorphins that have been released. You see, sometimes tiredness mimics depression, and depression mimics tiredness. Moving more helps you see which variable is which. Here's the second reason you should move more. Exercise fires the left side of your brain, which is the logical side. It's the non-emotional side. This is the side that helps you sort and be less emotional in your life responses. Now, just from a purely practical standpoint, when I'm exercising, when I'm out running or out riding my bike or doing something in the basement down in my garage, that is when I tend to have my best ideas. It's not when I'm sitting at the table trying to think of how do I fix this. It's when I'm not trying to think. And then all of a sudden, that side of the brain is fired up on its own and it's free to just kind of wander and sort by itself. Things just seem in those moments to click. Why? Because the logical side of my brain that sorts and figures out problems has now fired up, and the other one has kind of simmered down for a little bit. The third reason you should move more is because of this. Exercise works against stress. It awakens the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, your body's way more complex than I can tell you in the next couple minutes, but you basically have a parasympathetic nervous system and a sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for things like fight versus flight, which, as we discussed in earlier videos, is the PTS triggered response. When you exercise, it awakens the parasympathetic nervous system. It awakens the other part of your nervous system that helps you logically, orderly, walk things out. And I found when you do that, if you exercise, the tiredness, depression thing, it helps you sort on that level and say, hey, what am I dealing with? Am I tired or am I depressed? Number 2, it fires up that logical side of the brain. Number 3, the whole nervous system that doesn't react against stress but steps away from it. All those things work. Plus, the fourth reason I didn't even put on here is when you exercise, you actually look better. And when you look better, you feel better, and that has a lot to do with your emotions. For point number 3, let me give you 3 more tools for emotional health. Number 2 is to eat better. Number 3 is to write. And number 4 is to seek professional help. The second tool is to eat better. Here's why. Your gut is referred to as your second brain. The gut is shaped like a brain. You can see right there on the picture. It has the same amount of neurons. It actually has its own nervous system, and your gut actually thinks. You might have experienced this before. You're stepping into a situation and you know that you should go all in, or you know that you should step way out. And people say, "Why, how do you know?" And you say, I don't. I feel it in my gut. You have this intuition. You just felt it in your gut. Or you might have stepped into a situation that made you very anxious and you actually used the phrase, "I have butterflies in my stomach." Why? Because the gut is the second brain. And when you give your stomach better food, it actually has everything to do with how you feel. Let me give you another example that'll prove that food relates to how you feel. If you have kids and have ever given them Sour Patch Kids and soda, that elicits a completely different response than giving them broccoli and water. And it's why the stomach thing, many of us get up and we treat our body with some injection of caffeine, coffee, first thing in the morning, because we know that it puts us in a different state emotionally. Okay, so the second tool is to eat better. Give your body good fuel. We have other classes and courses that'll teach you how to do that. That makes your feelings, it makes your soul more stable and helps you move forward. The third thing that you could do, third tool, is to write things out. Now, I know you might say, "Well, I'm not a writer. I don't do that. That's not my profession. I don't like to write." I'm not talking about writing like that. And I'm not talking about writing even to leave a legacy journal for you or your kids to have. I'm talking about just doing a mind dump. Maybe even writing bullet points and dropping it out on paper, because when you release it, it's the same thing as making a to-do list to go to the grocery store. You write that to-do list because then you don't have to think about what's on that list. If you write it, there's some kind of act that's a neurological process. In writing something, it helps you sort it and it offloads it from your brain. You can come back to the list. Later on, you can review, you can clarify it, you can circle things that are true, you can highlight or scratch out things that are untrue. In fact, during about a 6-month period back in 2018, I journaled every single day and just wrote out my story longhand. I usually type when I'm writing, but I wrote it longhand and just wrote 600-700 pages, just making connections about things I'd seen in my life, things I was learning, that I was reading, that I could apply to my life. It was the best exercise that I've done in the past decade. It was the most revealing. It was difficult. There were times where I would just break down. It was the most revealing and helpful. And most of the things that I'm doing now, 90 to 95% of what I'm doing now, is a result of the time that I spent just dealing with that tough stuff and writing it out. So tool number 1, move more. Tool number 2 is to eat better. Tool number 3 is to write that stuff out. Tool number 4 is to seek professional help. Now you think about it, I've given you some tools. The first 3 are free: move more, eat better, write it out. This fourth one, pay a pro. A lot of people have a reaction to that. Let me just kind of break it down for you like this. We pay pros for everything. We pay pros to do our taxes. We pay professional people to fix our houses. We pay professional people to fix our cars, unless you're a mechanic. Some of us pay professionals to wash our cars or to clean our houses. Rick Warren, the author of The Purpose-Driven Life, he says early on in his marriage, this was before the church was big, this was before he had any books published, this was before he had even the income to pay for this, which now he does. He said that they sought marriage counseling because they were in a really rough spot. Now you can imagine when he says that from the stage, as a pastor, all the other pastors that are at a pastor's conference kind of lean in for more. And he says, people always ask how they afforded it. And he tells them, I just put it on a credit card. And they would say, well, why would you do that? And he'd say, that's what I needed to do. If my car broke down and I couldn't afford it, I would put it on a credit card. If my house, the AC went out and I had to fix it, I would put it on a credit card. And he's not saying, and I'm not suggesting that you go finance therapy. I am saying you need to be open to the possibility of paying for professional help, because you pay for professional help in every other area of life, and people think nothing about going into debt to buy a house or to buy a car. In fact, people think it's a little weird sometimes that I'm against financing cars. In this area, it seems odd that we're averse to debt or paying in this area for the maintenance of our souls, but we will pay in debt and go into debt for clothes, for houses, for cars, for just about every other thing. You see, as we close out, again, this is what we often expect, is we expect just a one and done. We expect really to go to therapy and for therapy to be a miracle, but what happens is therapy is more like therapuo. It is a walking it out, resource after resource, and over time, things actually get better. The War for Independence, a lot of people forget. Yeah, we know 1776. That's when the Declaration of Independence was signed. That's when we became a nation, but most people forget that the fighting started in 1775, and the fighting didn't actually end until 1783. 1781, the British formally surrendered at Yorktown. But some of the skirmishes still occurred. Now think about that. 1776, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81. 5+ years later until surrender, and then even 2 more years of still walking it out. Here's what I'm saying. At some point, you've got to claim your freedom. But after you claim it, it's not instant. You walk it out over time, and over time, you move from where you are to where you're designed to be. In the next video, we'll discuss the 5th tool for walking in emotional health. That's when we'll talk about stepping in to creation's rhythm.